Command, more than 2,000 Iraqi troops killed or wounded, and Saddam Hussein's leadership isn't giving up yet. Hello from Kuwait City. I'm Wolf Blitzer reporting new advances by ground and air today in the battle for the Iraqi capital. The first wave of aircraft is arriving at Baghdad International Airport. Each transport plane is capable of carrying between 50,000 and 130,000 pounds of troops and cargo. By ground, major roadblocks ringing Baghdad. A high-ranking army official warns Iraqis, if they want to stay alive, to stay off the roads. And Marines are on the move on a dangerous mission, searching for Iraqi forces and weapons that may be hiding in civilian areas. We'll take you along on this search in the suburbs. Standing by for us right now, though, CNN senior international correspondent Nick Robertson, who spent his last assignment reporting in the Iraqi capital, and CNN's Jana Roth, who's reporting now on a U.S. bombing mission gone bad in the northern part of the country. We'll get to them in just a moment, but first to CNN's Frederica Whitfield.
Thanks, Wolf. Here are the headlines at this hour. At nightfall, explosions could be seen in Baghdad, where U.S. forces say they've taken control of highways in and out of the city. Earlier, the coalition made a reconnaissance mission into the city for the second straight day, meeting pockets of Iraqi fighters. During their run through Baghdad, coalition forces left their mark. Iraqi officials say mortar bombs hit a commercial and residential district in the city, damaging several buildings. Coalition commanders have not confirmed that. Wounded people flooded Baghdad's hospitals during the firefight. One surgeon says his staff has treated more than 100 people. A true count of civilian injuries is not known, but International Red Cross officials say it could stand at several hundred. British troops raid parts of Basra, starting to secure the city for a humanitarian program. Commanders say the troops met light resistance, but were able to leave the opposing forces in, quote, disarray. They say they have not set a timeline to gain full control of the city. Those are the headlines making news at this hour. Another update at the half hour. Wolf?
Thanks very much, Frederica. These are historic moments, hours in the Iraqi capital, which is now in a state of siege. The U.S. military says coalition forces have Baghdad virtually cut off, and warplanes are flying around-the-clock missions overhead. CNN senior international correspondent Nick Robertson is tracking developments from Ruwayshed in Jordan, right near the Iraqi border. Another tumultuous night, Nick.
Indeed, Wolf. Just an hour ago, I was speaking to a source in Baghdad. He said the bombing had calmed down somewhat at that time. It was lighter. The bombardments were somewhat lighter than they had been earlier in the day. Earlier in the day, he'd said targets were being hit around the city in many different locations that hadn't been targeted before. Up until now, it's been presidential sites, government buildings, military headquarters. He said that there were places in the east of the city that were being targeted, perhaps around Iraqi troop concentrations that hadn't been targeted before. Indeed, he said in the center of the city, on occasion, machine gun fire could be heard. What he and other sources have found striking today is the number of armed Iraqis on the street of the capital, particularly in the western side, particularly in the areas close to the international airport. He says there are Republican Guard, Fedayeen fighters and Ba'ath Party fighters on the streets, all with machine guns, many with rocket-propelled grenades. There are some heavy Iraqi artillery pieces, some tanks in the west of the city. But what is striking all the people I'm talking to in Baghdad at the moment is the sheer number of people, armed people, who are on the streets of the west of Baghdad at this time. And the fact that when these people are talked to, they say at this time they fully intend to continue to fight. Now, the civilians at this time in the city are saying that they very much feel that they are getting caught in the crossfire. Civilians say that they believe that when they are being hit by coalition forces, hit by Iraqi forces as they try and either get out of harm's way or literally get caught up in the firefights. The people I'm talking to in Baghdad, the sources there say they believe 70 to 80% of the city's population have in fact moved out of the line of fire, but those that remain, some of them seem to be ending up in hospital. Certainly, according to hospital authorities in Baghdad, an increasing number of people, some of them civilians, arriving in the hospitals, beginning to overwhelm the hospitals there. But perhaps the biggest indication of the disposition of Iraqi forces at this time coming in a statement from President Saddam Hussein to the Iraqi people, delivered on Iraqi television by a news anchor dressed in a military uniform, essentially calling on those members of military units who found themselves broken away, dislocated from their original units, to join back in the fight, but join up with other military units.
In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, from Saddam Hussein to all of the fighters of the Iraqi armed forces, peace be upon you. When it is hard or difficult for any member to join their own respective unit, they can join, they can link up with any other unit, and they will be counted as such until further notice.
The overriding impression, Wolf, that we're getting from our sources in Baghdad is that those fighters on the streets of Baghdad at this time say that they fully intend to continue to fight. Wolf?
Nick, and this news anchor reading the statement from Saddam Hussein, making promises of rewards for martyrs or suicide bombers or others who fight with different units. What's that all about?
Motivational. We've heard this from the Iraqi leader before. This is a way to motivate people essentially to throw down their lives for the leadership. They have tried many other different methods, appealing to religion, appealing to national identity, appealing to people's patriotism. But this is something that they're using now to try and convince people that it is worth going into the fight, that it is worth dying for. If one remembers back to Iraq when it went to war with Iran at the beginning of the 1980s, the Iraqi government paid huge amounts of money to families at that time of people, soldiers who died fighting the Iranian forces. The money the country has had since that time completely disappeared. So it would seem this is a particularly desperate measure by the Iraqi leadership to reinstitute this feature, if you will, that if you die in the fight, that if you throw down your life, then your family will get money. Wolf?
Nick Robertson reporting from us as he always does. Thanks, Nick, very much. CNN senior international correspondent Walter Rogers is embedded with the Army's hard-charging 307th Cavalry, which is now in the business of blocking roads in and out of Baghdad. More now from Walter Rogers, who's near the Iraqi capital.
This is Walter Rogers with the U.S. 7th Cavalry on the outskirts of Baghdad. The Iraqi capital, Baghdad, is now completely encircled by U.S. forces, according to U.S. Army sources. The Marines are over on the northeast and southeast quadrants. The Army controls all other entrances to the city. What that means is all the highways into and out of the Iraqi capital are now under the control of U.S. military forces. One officer said to me, no one goes in those highways or out of those highways if they want to live. Earlier, the same Army sources told CNN that elements of the 2nd Brigade of the 3rd Infantry Division conducted yet another reconnaissance mission within the city limits of Baghdad. It was an armed reconnaissance position. It was not intended, they were not intending to stay. What they did was make a foray into the city and then retreat outward. In the western suburbs, there continue to be operating elements of the Iraqis, irregulars. They are firing on U.S. troops. Some officers are saying that the local Iraqis are saying that the Iraqi partisans, the Iraqi irregulars, are now taking refuge in schools by day and then coming out and fighting at night. Back to you, Wolf.
Thanks very much, Walter Rogers. He's with the 307th Cavalry right outside of Baghdad. And just south of Baghdad, U.S. Marines are securing the suburbs as well, and it's taking them into neighborhoods where families and perhaps Iraqi forces live. CNN's Martin Savage captures the dramatic and scary exchange for both sides, the Marines and the homeowners.
As they have for the past 3 days, the Marines continue to drive into the southeastern suburbs of Baghdad. And as they do, they have been encountering pockets of resistance. This is sporadic fighting that does not occur all the time, but does flare up from place to place. and they have been moving into more built-up areas, and that is complicating things for the movement of the convoys. Other units have pushed ahead, but now the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines in this specific area where we are at has been tasked with the job of cleanup, trying to find where the resistance is coming from. Who is it? The search and destroy missions, as they call it. The difficulty, of course, is they are now mixed in with the civilian population. Opposing forces are using that to their advantage. For the Marines, they have to be very careful now. Have to be careful that they select their targets and make sure that the targets they aim at are in fact hostiles, while the innocent civilians are not caught in the way. It is house-to-house searches at some time. A very poignant scene at one point that cameraman Scott McWhinney found as these Marines moved in on a house. Now, we do have translators, but not all the units have translators. They came across this one family. It's through voice and through hand gestures that they try to get them to come out of the house, and they do, but it's clear, you can tell, that the family is terrified in the presence of these Marines. Now, the Marines also, as you may notice in this video, are keeping their weapons well away. They are not pointing them at the women and children and the men of this family, and they are trying to assure them that it's for their own safety. The Marines have been receiving fire from this specific area. They are trying to simply search in and around the home, and once that is completed, the family was allowed to return back to their house. Meanwhile, though, in the backyards, in the back alleys, and the side streets, it's a different story. At times, infantry units are fired upon. They call in artillery, which is used to take out some of the heavier fortified positions of Iraqi opposition. This is the way it has gone for the past 3 days and may continue like that for some time. However, last night, a special find. The 1st Battalion, 7th Marines managed to capture 3 members of the Special Iraqi Republican Guard. These were men that were identified because of the ID cards that they had with them. They weren't wearing uniforms, but they did have them in the back seat of their vehicle as well as their weapons. The 3 men now are being interrogated and reportedly cooperating with the Marines. It is hard, difficult, dangerous work, within the forefront of their minds, always protecting Iraqi civilians. Martin Savage, CNN, southeast of Baghdad.
In northern Iraq, U.S. troops and their Kurdish allies have been backed by heavy airstrikes on Iraqi positions. But today, one of those airstrikes apparently went wrong, taking a heavy toll on a Kurdish convoy. CNN's Jane Arraf is near Erbil in northern Iraq. She's joining us live. Jane, tell us what happened.
Wolf, it could hardly have been more horrific or more unfortunate. Essentially, it was a convoy of Peshmerga, those Kurdish fighters. And as you know, the Kurdish fighters are badly paid, badly equipped, but they love the American forces. They see them as a liberation army. They were approaching the front lines in northern Iraq, about 20 miles from the city of Erbil, about 60 miles from Mosul, when they were hit by a U.S. bomb. Now, the bomb obviously dropped by mistake, but it did hit this convoy, which contained, unfortunately, a senior Kurdish military leader. He happens to be the brother of Masoud Barzani, who is known here as the president, in a sense, of the region. It also injured the son of Masoud Barzani. It killed a translator for the BBC, and it injured an Afghan journalist as well. Altogether, the toll was at least 18 killed and at least 45 injured. Now, the Peshmerga, the Kurdish forces, say this will not affect their relationship with the U.S. Despite that, they still believe in them and still very much want to work with them. What this convoy was aiming for was the front line of a ridge. Now, this morning, it was an amazing scene. The special forces on the ground there told us that Iraqi tanks actually advanced in a rare offensive maneuver. They were without air cover at the time, so they called in airstrikes. Apparently, one of these airstrikes that was called in resulted in the bomb being dropped on this convoy. All throughout the day, these special forces continued to fire at the Iraqi tanks. They used mortar, gunfire, anti-tank missiles, as well as these very dramatic shots that we see indicating that they were using laser-guided bombs dropped from F-14s. In the end, they said they disabled probably about 10 tanks, and they were still continuing to hold that position. Wolf?
Jane Arraf with all the late-breaking developments in the northern part of Iraq. Jane, thanks very much. Let's get back to this huge battle for Baghdad. Historic developments unfolding right now. CNN's Miles O'Brien is joining us. He has a satellite view of the military moves in the Iraqi capital. Miles?
Thanks very much, Wolf. The U.S. military indicating it has encircled Baghdad. Imagine what it would take to encircle Chicago or Philadelphia. Let's move in on Baghdad and give you a sense of what they're talking about. By no means are there enough U.S. troops in Baghdad to completely hermetically seal it around. This area you're seeing right here extends about 15 miles across. That's 15 miles, and it's a city of 5 to 6 million people. I'm going to overlay a map here just to help you understand a little bit better what we're talking about. There's the map. That's the center of Baghdad. Now, if you look very closely, you can see there are key points along here, key highways, which are of interest. It comes out to about between 8 and 10, which are the main choke points, which would be the focus for the U.S. troops. So when they say they have it encircled, they're going after these key highways, and that certainly by no means indicates that the city is sealed off by any stretch of the imagination. Let's talk a little bit about the airport for just a moment. Significant bit of history there as the C-130, U.S. C-130, landed at what is now Baghdad International Airport, formerly Saddam International Airport, beginning the process of bringing supplies in. That's a cargo aircraft, and no doubt that will be this runway here, runway 33 right, will become a very busy place filled with U.S. aircraft in the days to come. Let's talk a little bit about this as a base of operation for the 3rd Infantry. We'll tell you about their foray outside the airport grounds. This is a look at it right from the ground. We're told between 2,000 and 3,000 Iraqi fighters became casualties as a result of this 25-mile foray into the city of Baghdad. Significant casualties, very few, conversely, on the U.S. side. I'll show you quickly on the map here exactly their route. It took them right toward the center of Baghdad. And after I get a chance to do that, here we go, right there. It just went around that way. Now, let's talk about the Marines. We haven't talked much about them. Take you down to a place called Semin Pak. Semin Pak is a place that supposedly had a terrorist camp. Marines walked in there. They expected to find 2,000 fighters. Those fighters, as Martin Savage has been reporting to us, more or less just melted into the landscape, if you will. Take a look at some of the pictures as those Marines went through town there. Some tense moments as they went through these towns, tried to seal things up, tried to secure things, in many cases seeing innocence, or what appeared to be innocence, obviously expressing in this case apparent happiness at seeing the U.S. forces. But as they move north, the Marines will move toward yet another key point, which I predict we'll be hearing a little bit about in the future, up Route 8 to the Rashid Airport. This is another significant airport in the Baghdad area, primarily a military airport. Not sure what its situation is now, whether Special Operations perhaps has gained a foothold there, but it's right along the Marine path, and we look to hear from the Marines getting near this region very soon. That's a brief overview of what's going on, Wolf.
Miles O'Brien, thanks very much. I suspect we'll also be hearing in the days ahead a lot about a place called Tikrit, which is Saddam Hussein's hometown just north of Baghdad as well. History is unfolding right now before all of us on this pivotal day. You won't want to turn away from us this hour and throughout the night here on CNN. Baghdad's in the balance as U.S. planes start landing at the huge airport there, and Allied troops prepare to take the city. We'll give you all the late-breaking developments as soon as they happen. Also, just ahead, a bold move in Basra. British forces make a dramatic push into the city. What did they encounter? We'll show you. And trying to win hearts and minds, can the Marines bring the local population to their side as they move toward Baghdad? All that, as well as a top United States general. He has some choice words about Saddam Hussein. Stay with us.
Car of tomorrow. It has the ride of a luxury sedan, the seating capacity of a minivan.
What's a minivan?
And capabilities of an SUV.
SUV?
Oh, did I mention the compartments for your laptop and your cell phone? They just weren't ready for it. Are you? My name is Harley Earl, and I've come back to build you a great car.
Buick, the spirit of American style.
Moving freely makes my spirits soar.
Flexium works two ways. Patented SAMe helps ease pain from everyday activities. Plus, glucosamine helps renew cartilage. You can feel results in as little as 2 weeks. Feel the Flexium difference. Guaranteed.
Smart Balance Buttery Spreads, judged the best tasting in the soft vegetable spread category by the American Tasting Institute, helps to improve the ratio of good to bad cholesterol. With no trans fatty acids and no hydrogenated oil. Use delicious Smart Balance Buttery Spreads.
Because things are changing so fast, trust CNN. With more frontline reporters, experts who have been there, and the most experienced journalists. Because you need all the facts. Stay with CNN, the most trusted name in news.
As fighting continues across Iraq, here are some more battle scenes unfolding right now. With troops now ringing Baghdad, coalition aircraft are over the capital flying urban combat support missions around the clock and looking for so-called targets of opportunity. Some battle scenes are behind the scenes. The U.S. Central Command today showed video of Special Operations Forces dropping in on an Iraqi airfield, securing it for coalition military use. The supply lines to the front lines stretch for hundreds of miles. British paratroopers in southern Iraq are using helicopters to step up instant stop and search checkpoints along the route. After weeks of waiting, coalition forces finally make their big push into the southern Iraqi city of Basra. British troops are striking Saddam Hussein's forces and destroying symbols of the Iraqi leader. CNN's Diana Muriel reports from Basra.
We crossed into Basra with units attached to the 1st Battalion, the Black Watch, who are part of the 7th Armoured Brigade, the Desert Rats. They moved into the city from the south across a bridge, heading towards a shantytown district. There, their tanks were engaged by Iraqi fighters who fired AK-47s, rocket-propelled grenades and mortars. As the tanks opened fire and as the 2 attack Cobra helicopters that were sent in from the United States forces to spot targets, the fighters withdrew ever northwards towards the centre of Basra. The mortars were being fired from mobile base plates and they were taken with them as they left the district. The British forces were able to sweep through the south of the city. After that first engagement, there was relatively little engagement with Iraqi fighters. There was an artillery bombardment of a military compound with several Iraqi tanks destroyed in that attack. As the tanks rolled into the centre of Basra, the people came out to stare, some to wave and to give the thumbs up. Others, more of them, standing bemused and expressionless at the side of the road. The British forces fanned out throughout the city and have taken up various defensive positions, strategic positions within the city. They're also finding safe compounds to keep their tanks in overnight. The true test as to whether or not the Iraqi fighters have really left the city may come this evening if British forces are engaged in further fighting with them. Diana Muriel, CNN, Basra, southern Iraq.
And stay with us for this hour. We're ready to bring you all the latest developments as U.S. forces start bringing in planes to the Baghdad International Airport. The city's fate could be decided very soon. Also just ahead, a forward air base in southern Iraq. What kind of air cover is it providing for Allied troops in Baghdad? And the sights and sounds of a capture. Up close and raw with British troops as they went into Basra today.
CNN's continuing coverage of the war in Iraq. U.S. reports say Iraqi military may be using mosques and hospitals as bases of military operations. How will U.S. forces respond? Plus, live reports on the war in Iraq from our embedded reporters. All these stories and more today at 6 p.m. Eastern. Stay with CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Smart move, Dave. Consolidated with Dell PowerEdge servers. Highly available, highly scalable. Intel Xeon processors. Cuts costs across the board. So you're not gonna miss those old servers, right?
Oh, Tony. What did you do with the old servers?
Nothing.
That's our drinking fountain, isn't it?
You mean Hydra?
Find out how you can cut costs across your enterprise. Easy as Dell. Call or go online today.
We should change before we pick up the girls. Okay.
Chevy Avalanche. It changes from a pickup to an SUV.
What are you doing?
Avalanche, like a rock.
Coalition forces say they've surrounded Baghdad, now are in control of all the roads leading out of the Iraqi capital. It's a noose around the neck of Saddam Hussein's regime, and that noose will tighten in the hours and days ahead. Encircling Baghdad, a battle line of coalition forces. U.S. Army sources tell CNN Marines and Army troops are surrounding the capital, controlling all routes in and out, warning Iraqi forces, if you want to stay alive, stay off those roads. But U.S. commanders say they expect their soldiers to take fire from pockets of resistance in the capital. Coalition sources and people inside Baghdad tell CNN Iraqi forces are using hospitals, schools, mosques, and even private homes to launch military operations. The Iraqis accuse the coalition of intentionally bombing those places. Southwest of Baghdad, U.S. commanders say the first U.S. military planes landed at Baghdad's international airport Sunday night, 2 days after its capture by American troops. In the north, near Mosul, a reported friendly fire incident. At least 12 Kurdish fighters allied with U.S.-led forces are killed, at least 45 wounded, apparently hit by a coalition bomb as they traveled in a convoy.
Ameriki bomb? Hey, Ameriki. Yeah, Ameriki bomb. Ameriki.
In the south, a dramatic advance by British forces into Basra. The move was intended to be a raid, but British troops took only light resistance, then took hold of several key strategic positions to secure the city. As coalition forces stream into Baghdad, wounded Iraqi civilians and soldiers stream into Iraqi hospitals. But some injured Iraqis are also getting treatment from surgeons with the U.S. Navy. CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta, our medical correspondent, is embedded with the U.S. military, and he has a close-up look at how the U.S. military doctors, known as the Devil Docs, how they're doing. Sanjay, tell us what's going on.
Hey, Wolf, as we've talked about so many times, the particular situation the Devil Docs in are with something called a mobile operating room. They pack up and they move record film itself. We're from the actual moving perp. We're in a convoy. We're in the back of a who are reservists. They've never experienced anything like this either. It is truly a big truck, 7-ton truck, and we're sitting in the back of it. I will tell you that it was supposed to be a 3-hour trip. We're now over 9 hours. That is not atypical. And a lot of these road trips are heavily guarded. Just not that long ago, we saw an actual firefight. We saw Cobra helicopter come in and really give us an impressive light show, for one thing, with a lot of air-to-surface firepower to end that particular firefight. Extra security was brought in. We were never in any particular danger ourselves, and now on our way even further north. Wolf, yesterday you and I spoke. We were 30 miles from Baghdad. At that point, we are now headed even further north. Why? So that this particular mobile operating room, which is the frontmost hospital, frontmost surgical operating room, can actually support the frontline troops. Listen, they are ready for numbers. They know that there's a lot going on here. All of these surgical operating rooms are slowly piggybacking their way closer to Iraq, closer and closer to Baghdad, are going to consolidate and develop a large hospital, large operating center, take care of whatever may come over the next couple of days, next couple of weeks in the capital. Wolf?
Dr. Sanjay Gupta, our medical correspondent, thanks for that report. Some of it was hard to hear, but we certainly appreciate the excellent work you're doing. Certainly appreciate the work that the Devil Docs are doing, saving lives, U.S. as well as Iraqi lives. And as troops tighten their grip on Baghdad, they're being backed up by coalition fighter pilots. CNN's Harris Whitback is at an air base in southern Iraq, the launching point for much of that air support.
The coalition says that as its forces encircle Baghdad, they are receiving a lot of support from the air. 24/7 air patrols now in the skies of Baghdad, and a lot of those air missions come from this forward air base in southern Iraq. A-10 Warthog combat planes have been flying missions pretty much constantly today. They don't tell us exactly where they're going, but we have been told that they are very near at the vicinity of Baghdad, mostly providing close ground support for those troops that are on the ground. Meanwhile, on this Sunday, a lot of people try to take some time to attend worship services. The chaplain here, U.S. Air Force chaplain, held the first Protestant worship service at this forward air base since it was taken by coalition forces several days ago. Troops here saying they expect to be here for quite some time. Coalition saying that this air base is expected to become a major hub for the flow of humanitarian aid once security conditions permit it. Harris Whitbeck, CNN, at a forward air base in southern Iraq.
And we're watching Baghdad very closely tonight. Significant Iraqi casualties have been reported in the battle for the capital, and we'll bring you all the latest from there as soon as it happens. Just ahead, what a top United States general says about Saddam Hussein, calling into question his prowess as a commander. The raw images of urban combat up close with British troops as they move in on Basra. And remembering a colleague, another prominent American journalist dies in Iraq.
Wolf Blitzer takes you inside the war in Iraq.
U.S. troops on the ground.
Experience you can trust only on CNN.
Pollen, look at that runny nose and those itchy eyes.
Yeah, ragweed, it doesn't get better than this.
Seasonal allergies live to make you miserable, but Allegra is specifically designed to block the histamine that triggers so many symptoms. Maybe that's why it's the #1 prescription antihistamine.
Looks like our little garden party's over.
You can thank Allegra for that.
For people 12 and over, side effects are low and may include headache, cold, or back pain. Ask your doctor about Allegra.
Allegra schmalegra.
Allegra, so much relief for so many symptoms.
Mesothelioma is a rare, malignant type of cancer in the lungs, usually associated with exposure to asbestos. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with mesothelioma, call the law offices of James Sokolov at 1-800-342-3348. That's 1-800-342-3348. 1-800-342-3348.
CNN, the most trusted name in news. CNN Live this hour. Wolf Blitzer reports from Kuwait City. With correspondents from around the world, Wolf Blitzer Reports starts now.
These are critical hours in Baghdad. It's almost daybreak over there. It's getting obviously closer towards daylight. A lot of activity going on today. Much more activity will be going on tomorrow. The U.S. military now having encircled the Iraqi capital. All roads leading in and out of Baghdad now firmly under U.S. military control. We're watching the situation in Baghdad. We're also watching the latest headlines. For that, let's go back to CNN's Federico Whitfield in the newsroom in Atlanta.
Thanks, Wolf. Here are the headlines at this hour. Coalition forces in Baghdad are searching door to door, hoping to weed out Iraqi paramilitaries who may be hiding in civilian areas. Army commanders say irregular Iraqi fighters have been hiding in schools during the day and coming out at night to engage coalition forces. People in the Iraqi town of Qasr are getting food aid, but a UN spokesman says that while food supplies are normal, a pre-war shortage of water and vaccines still exists. He also said the UN will continue monitoring Qasr until the main port for relief shipments can go through. Former POW Jessica Lynch is reunited with her family in Germany. Lynch is being treated at Ramstein Air Base for wounds she received during her captivity in Iraq. Her parents arrived there this morning to visit Jessica for the first time since she was rescued. 2 more people have died from severe acute respiratory syndrome. The latest deaths happened overnight in Hong Kong. Since its initial outbreak, the pneumonia-like illness has affected more than 2,000 people in 18 countries. So far, there have been no SARS-related deaths in the U.S. A huge portion of the southwest and central United States is under severe weather warnings. People in Oklahoma through Tennessee should watch out for thunderstorms into the evening. One tornado is thought to have touched down near Meridian, Mississippi, causing minor damage. Those are the headlines making news at this hour. Now back to our coverage of war in Iraq with Wolf.
Thanks very much, Frederica. Amid all these momentous developments in and around the Iraqi capital, President Bush is now preparing for this week's summit in Northern Ireland. He and the British Prime Minister, Tony Blair, his close ally, will discuss the course of the war, and they'll also look ahead to post-war Iraq. Let's go live to our White House correspondent, Chris Burns. Chris?
Hi, Wolf. The president making a quick stop overnight here from Camp David, passing through the White House on his way to Belfast. Why this hastily organized trip to Belfast? It's how quickly things are moving on the battlefield and how quickly they have to decide what to replace Saddam Hussein with. That is the overriding issue as they meet in Belfast through Tuesday night. The question is, how quickly should they hand power from a military regime or military authority over to some kind of an Iraqi interim authority? How much power should be given to them? How much of a role the UN should play? A face-off today between the leading members of the Senate Armed Services Committee.
The President, through his Secretary of State, said that the United Nations should be partners. I add to that phrase, yes, they should be partners, but the managing partners. In other words, those that with the ultimate responsibility for the interim period should be representatives from the coalition forces, the United States, Great Britain, Australia, Poland, and others who've taken a very active role.
Carl Levin, the ranking Democrat on that committee, coming back saying you don't want an American occupation force, you want to hand it quickly over to some kind of a regime that includes perhaps supervision by the United Nations, a debate that's going to play out with Tony Blair pushing that angle when he meets with President Bush on Tuesday. Wolf?
Chris Burns at the White House. Thanks, Chris, very much for that report. And as the U.S. military tightens its stranglehold around Baghdad, there's one big remaining obstacle standing between it and toppling the regime, namely innocent civilians. For that, let's go to our senior Pentagon correspondent, Jamie McIntyre. Jamie?
And in that interview with you earlier today, Wolf, Peter Pace, the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, had another warning that despite the success so far by the United States, the U.S. military faces significant combat ahead.
Hey, we got 2 doors.
The tears of a terrified girl as wary U.S. Marines hold an Iraqi family at gunpoint illustrate the biggest complication for U.S. troops as they move in on Baghdad: how to surgically destroy the Iraqi regime without devastating the Iraqi people.
It is clear at this point that the risk is increasing to the civilian population because of decisions made by regime leaders.
The U.S. Central Command says the blue arrows in this reconnaissance photograph point to places in Baghdad where military equipment has been placed next to homes in a residential area to protect it from aerial attack. And the U.S. accuses Iraqi forces of conducting military operations from the Mother of All Battles Mosque, a sacred site in the northwest section of the city, as well as the Saddam Hospital, both of which are on the U.S. no-strike list. The U.S. is moving quickly to consolidate its gains, flying supplies into its main operating base at the renamed Baghdad International Airport, while concentrating ground forces and aerial surveillance on the main roads.
We do control the highways in and out of the city and do have the capability to interdict, to stop, to attack any Iraqi military forces that might try to either escape or to engage our forces.
Pentagon sources say the U.S. will conduct more armored raids in which U.S. tanks and Bradleys roar through the city streets. The idea is twofold: a show of force, and a chance to lure Iraqi troops into an overmatched duel. The Pentagon doesn't know, but estimates its conquest of Baghdad may have killed between 2,000 and 3,000 Iraqi soldiers, and it believes thousands of others have abandoned their weapons and melted into the city. Sources also say the U.S. may launch other forays into Baghdad if there's a chance to capture or kill Saddam Hussein or any of his inner circle.
We want to attack a specific regime location where a meeting is ongoing and kill everyone that's in the meeting. We might do that in some cases. That could happen in Baghdad.
While the U.S. doesn't discuss future operations, this prediction from a senior defense official: look for the United States to seize more territory in Baghdad over the next 24 hours. Wolf?
Jamie McIntyre, thanks very much. Jamie's at the Pentagon, of course. And will the reopening of the Baghdad International Airport to coalition military transports alter the battle for Baghdad? Joining me now from Little Rock, CNN military analyst, retired U.S. Army General Wesley Clark, the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. General Clark, what does that do for the takeover of the Iraqi capital, the fact that that huge airport outside of Baghdad is now firmly under U.S. military control?
Well, Wolf, it certainly gives us a lot more flexibility in the coalition forces. It can bring in supplies and logistics. You can bring in special operations units. You can use it as a launching pad. Plus, it's a huge, important psychological symbol, not only inside Iraq, but for the whole world, of the effectiveness of the coalition campaign.
When I spoke with General Pace, Peter Pace, the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, earlier today, he said they can go in on these forays, he called them armored raids, into Baghdad almost at will, but and then they leave, but at some point they're going to have to stay and fight it out, maybe street to street, maybe house to house, with those Fedayeen Saddam and the Special Security Organization fighters that the Iraqis still have. That sounds like it could be incredibly risky to U.S. lives.
It could, Wolf, but I think that the strategy the administration's picked here for the fight on Baghdad is a wise one for this reason, because there's a lot of flexibility, there's a lot of deception, there's a lot of surprise in the raid process, and each raid consumes casualties, throws the Iraqis off balance, and demonstrates again the overpowering superiority of the coalition of the American forces that are in Baghdad. And so by the time it's necessary to seize those facilities, or the opportunity presents itself, we'll have a very good understanding of the enemy's strengths, dispositions, and capabilities. We'll have reduced their force significantly, and we'll be more confident that we can not only seize but hold and secure key areas of the terrain. I think this is very similar in pattern to what you've seen unfolding in Basra over the last 2 weeks.
In that initial 3-hour foray into Baghdad, General Pace told me that they believe they wound up killing 2,000 to 3,000 Iraqi soldiers, virtually no U.S. casualties. How do you explain that?
Well, the United States has very, very important technological advantages. Unlike previous efforts in urban combat, we control the skies. We have unmanned aerial vehicles overhead. We have real-time communications with our Air Force, our artillery, the intelligence community. We know where we are in that city, so this is important. But the other side of it is the Iraqi side. They're disorganized, they're not effectively trained, they're full of fighting spirit, but they lack the real hard organizational skills and training and fighting capabilities at the bottom to be terribly effective against these very competent American forces.
One final question, General, before I let you go. The fear of chemical or biological weapons being used against U.S. troops as they move into Baghdad. The notion is, a lot of experts are saying, that fear is really realistically gone now, because the Iraqis would wind up killing thousands of Iraqis, very few U.S. Marines or soldiers, because they're well prepared for that. They have the equipment, they have the suits. But in an urban area, they would wind up killing their own people. Is that a realistic assessment?
I think that would be the great probability. There's always a small possibility that these weapons could be used in some pinpoint area. But, you know, as you look at the whole course of this campaign, Wolf, what we've seen is the initiative and the tempo of the coalition operations have continuously kept the Iraqis off balance. The U.S. forces and British forces did not sit in Kuwait waiting to be, in the terms of the soldiers, slimed with chemical weapons. They moved out. And even now, as they're moving around Baghdad, from the standpoint of an Iraqi targeting cell, these Allied forces must form a very difficult target. Other than Baghdad International Airport, no one knows precisely where they are. And after all, that airport's a very big target. So it's not as easy to strike them, even if you had the will to do so and the means at hand, because you can't really pin them down.
And I can only imagine the excitement of seeing that first C-130 Hercules transport land at Baghdad International Airport earlier in the day. General Clark, thanks so much for joining us. Baghdad is again where the battle lines are being drawn. Will there be another significant move on the capital tonight? Stay with us throughout this hour, indeed throughout the night here on CNN. We'll be updating you whenever anything happens. We're live 24 hours a day. Just ahead, capturing Basra. You're there with British troops making a bold move on that city.